All righty, everyone, welcome and thank you for joining us for another one of our organizing curriculum webinars, where we are trying to share information about how we develop as leaders, how we identify and develop other folks as leaders. This has been an ongoing project, and if you haven't seen some of the past webinars, we had one on MIPA, we had one on agenda planning, and we've had a bunch around meaningfully developing leaders as we take time to really strengthen our PWN chapters and develop skills for all of us. So welcome. Today we're going to be talking about identifying and developing leaders. And I am really honored to be here with Ebony to talk to you about how we're going to develop leaders and how we identify. And we're going to talk about leaders actually in places where you can find leaders in a little bit of a different way. So I'm excited to hear what people have to think. We do have a place where we're going to break out into groups. And so just a reminder, when we break out into groups, people who's in the room, the folks on Facebook will be able to see us, but they will not be able to see people in your breakout rooms. Couple of logistics that we just want to follow up on so people know what's going on. The meeting is being recorded. It is also being live streamed on Facebook. So hello, Facebook land. If you would like to turn off your camera, please feel free to do so. But it is wonderful to see everyone in our gallery view. We are in meeting mode, so we will go ahead and mute you if you are in some place that is noisy. Or you can go ahead and mute yourself. And if you want to ask a question, you can come off of mute and just ask a question. If you're on your phone, you use *6 to mute and unmute yourself. Feel free to ask questions. We don't actually have the question and answer box enabled, so you can just go ahead and ask questions in the chat box, and people will help us catch those as they go by. And when we get to the question and answer part, we'll go ahead and address those. We will stop at several points to answer any questions that you might have. Today, I am joined by the amazing Ebony Turk. Ebony, I'm so grateful that you're here to be presenting with me on this identifying and developing leaders portion. Ebony is our national field organizer, uses she, her pronouns, and my name is Barb Cardell, and I am the PWN USA Training and Technical Assistance Director, and I use they, them pronouns. We just like to start off by centering everyone in our learning that we're going to do today. It is easy for us to feel, especially as we are isolated and not able to be in locations with each other, that we are the only ones doing the work, that not so much we're the only ones doing the work, but we feel isolated and that we don't have people to connect to as we do the work. It is so important that we know that we are interconnected. And so we'll talk a lot about that this time. But one of my favorite quotes is from Martin Luther King Jr., which is, before you finish eating breakfast this morning, you've depended on more than half the world. So while we are not as connected physically as we'd like to be, while we're not in the same spaces, we certainly are connected by the work that we do and the leadership that we do. The goals for our webinar today are, by the end of the webinar, we hope you'll be able to consider how you're identifying new leaders, who counts as a leader and who doesn't. And maybe we're missing out on some opportunities to build our base and bring people in if our standard of how we define leaders is too high or not inclusive enough. We want to meaningfully involve our new and seasoned leaders living with HIV in our chapter work, in our state work, and in our PWN work. We want to identify what issues are most important to people. One of the things, and this was a profound statement that somebody shared with me early on in my advocacy days, is if you want people to really feel engaged and meaningfully involved, the most important thing is to ask them what matters to them, to listen and to closely understand what they feel brings them to this work, what they want to do, and how they feel like they want to be able to move through these spaces. So identifying the issues is one way to make sure that people are really meaningfully involved and feel like their voice is heard, and that both campaigns and strategies include their point of view. We want to build our base and bring in new leaders quickly. We want to make sure that when we identify someone, when we talk to them in a meeting, or we run into them at a clinic in a waiting room, that we are able to connect them and bring them in instead of getting back to them, after a month or so. We want people to know that they are important and that they are included in our membership. Finally, we want to know that self-care builds resilience. There is a whole last section of this webinar today that talks about resilience and self-care. It has been a long year and a half, long 2 years. And so we want to make sure that we are continuing to talk about what does self-care look like for you. If you burn yourself out, it doesn't do any of us any good. And so we want to talk about self-care for our organizers and self-care for our leaders, self-care for our organization. So we have a couple of questions to get started. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually break people into breakout rooms so that you can have a conversation. And there should be 3 or 4 people in each of your rooms. I'm going to go ahead and first copy these questions into the chat box. And if people can just go ahead, they should stay up on your chat box. But this is what we would like you to talk about, is to break into these small groups and talk about how do you identify new leaders? What is meaningfully involving new and seasoned leaders? Oops, sorry, hang on. Let me try that. Questions for the group. We're going to talk about who has power in your community. We're going to talk about how do we build power in our communities? Who is seen as a leader and why? How do we develop and sustain leaders? What is power and privilege? Always so important for us to talk about. What is power and privilege? What do you have and how can you share it? And so we're going to go ahead and assign people into breakout rooms. And looks like we've got enough people we're going to do 5 breakout rooms just so that we can give people a chance to really talk. And so what you'll need to do is once you are assigned to a room, you will need to go ahead and accept the assignment. And that will put you into the room to be able to talk to people. And then we'll go ahead and we'll give you a 1-minute warning before you come out of the room so that you can go ahead and finish up any conversations that you are having. So go ahead and accept. You should have a small box on your screen that says join breakout room, and we'll just go ahead and assign you all there. And it looks like we have staff members who are here. And just to let everyone know that we are live streaming on Facebook. And so they will continue to see us. And so if you want to go ahead and turn your camera off, staff members, we can go ahead and just have a little bit of a break.
So for the people on Facebook, if you want to join into the conversation, you can add these questions. You can add your answer to these questions in the chat box. Who has the power in your community or organization? How do we build power in our communities? How do you build power in your community? Who is seen as a leader and why? How do we develop or sustain leaders in our community? What power or privilege do you have and how can you share it? You can answer any of those questions in the chat and I'll try to make my way over there to post them in case you guys want to join the conversation.
Hey, Ebony, I joined in and put those questions in for you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deirdre. It looks like we have people in there. All right, we'll give people another 3 minutes to be in their small groups, and then we'll go ahead and bring them out and see if anybody has anything that they'd like to share about what they talked about. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. Ebony makes me happy when skies are gray.
You decided to do it anyway, huh?
I can't stand it, the silence. It's, you know, well, that and it's raining outside, and so I've been sort of singing it to myself all day. Brianna, you'll never know, dear, how much I love Brianna.
I heard singing and I was like, wait.
Look at the
Exactly. Please don't take a rocket away.
Stand it to say, please don't take my puppies away, because we have a
All right, she's biting me.
puppies for people who are watching on Facebook and do not know that PWN is a pretty dog intensive space these days. And Ebony, we just consider that bears and horses are just big dogs.
Got it.
Yeah,
I was
so
gonna-
it's,
I was
you know,
going to tell you on our pictures. I was looking forward to seeing the horse and the bear, and then you put our pictures there.
Yep. I, you know, decided that we would put, since we had both such professional grinny pictures of the two of us, that we put it up. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and give people a 1-minute warning. So let's see. So just a note to people who are using breakout rooms, you don't get to pull people out just whoosh. It gives them a 59-second countdown. So I always figure that into my times.
It's the final countdown. That's what now I feel like we need to be singing.
Nah, you are my sunshine, my Virginia sunshine. See, that's what's great about it, is that you can actually change the words all around. All right, so people have about 15 seconds and then they'll start coming back. And Ebony, if it's okay with you, I'll take another 3 or 4 minutes for people to share what they have in their groups.
Absolutely.
They talked about in their groups. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, we have enough time.
Amor,
You didn't give us enough time.
we spent half of that telling each other hi.
Yes.
I know. It is, it is true. It is true. And I am the worst when I get into breakout rooms because I'm just like, oh my gosh, I haven't talked to you forever. And then lo and
Exactly
behold,
what we're doing.
we had a point, yeah, we're talking about. So welcome back, everybody. Thank you. I have heard that indeed that there was not enough time in the breakout room to really do much more than say hello. So appreciate everyone for coming back. And do we have any groups? We had 5 groups. So is there anyone from group 5? I'm going to go ahead and do it backwards. Anyone from group 5, which was, let's see, Roxanne, Rimsky, and Tana, who wants to share what you all talked about?
Oh, I was in group 3.
So Roxanne,
We managed to get through our questions. Rimsky got cut off at the last question on sharing what is her power or privilege, but we managed to get through ours. We were saying that power in our community and organizations are us. You know, we're the experts, we're the people who know the best about how we live on a daily, dealing with being as women living with HIV. So we're the experts. We build power in our communities by strategizing, mobilizing, supporting people.
Great, thank you, Roxy. And Rimsky, I like your little. Are those leaves on your head, or are those is that a bow?
I'm supposed to be a little cherry.
Okay, gotcha. So basically what we have is that Rimsky builds power by being able to work all of the Zoom technology with the additions and things like that. So thank you for modeling that. We're going to have you show everyone else how to use it on a future webinar. So let's check in with room 4, which was Meta and Morgan and Olga. What did you all think about these questions? Is there anything that you want to add to what Roxy shared?
I mean, we we said white men with money have a lot of power. And then, really who holds the power over the white men is their wives. Happy wife, happy life kind of thing. And if you want to really infiltrate those organizations that are controlled by those type folks, you go after the lemonade social ladies. I like their attitude better though. I like that they said that we have the power. But yeah, Olga had some good points. Everybody had good points in my group. Meta, you want to go? You want to say anything?
We talked about, Olga pointed out that one of the things that she has is her white privilege. And each of us pointed out that one of the powers that we have is our voice. Not only are we willing to use them, but I would venture to say that I can speak for all of us, that our voices are loud as shit, okay? We want to be heard. We think that it's important to show up at meetings that you aren't, places that you aren't invited to. And it's nice if you show up in a group and we're going to be heard. Morgan said something about the nuances. Say that, Morgan.
I said that people tell me a lot to skip the nuance and just go with the broad strokes to not confuse the point. But I think that the nuance is really important, especially when you're trying to convince people to make big changes, because when they hear big, broad, open ideas, they think you're making big, broad changes. But if you're just making these small little nuances different, they think that you're changing small little things that don't apply to them. And so it's important to acknowledge those things. And it's important to the people involved or affected by those nuances as well, to not just be part of, a wave of things. People want to be individually recognized and want to be cared about for their individual issues. So yeah, from two different sides, it's really important to really deeply understand the details of why.
Great, thank you, Morgan. Thank you, Meta. Absolutely, our voices are loud as shit, and I'm just going to say that one more time because that is a good reminder. Nuances and loud voices, those are who we are. All right, room 3, that was Lisa, Johnson Lett, Maria, and Mary Dorsey. Is there anything else that your group wants to add?
I'd like to add the power of lived experience that Lisa strongly spoke of in the hierarchies, interrelating in the hierarchies in her community from, and then you get to money. But as a person of lived experience, she has a great deal of power, and that's the people with money have power. I live in California, and we have kind of lots of old white men who retired here, and so we have a community here.
Yeah, thank you, Mary.
Okay.
All right, room 2, which was Alicia and Jessica and Katie. Is there anything that you all would like to add?
Yeah, this is Alicia in North Carolina. So when I first saw the question, we didn't get through all of them, but we dabbled on at least 3 of them. The first one, who has power in your community or organization? And immediately when I saw that, the first thing came to my mind was I do. And I thought about, I didn't take it, big for the whole work that we do. I took it for my community because it starts with me in my community. And when I say I have the power, like I'm new in my community, literally, but I also voted today in my community for the first time. And I've been here for 6, 7 months. But my voice, me casting my vote, me having the opportunity to go to a neighborhood meeting to say, I agree or disagree with XYZ. So yes, I have the power within my organization. So that was for me. And then we talked about, and I'll let my sisters weigh in as well, but who is seen as a leader and why. And I feel like we're all leaders, and it doesn't matter what we look like and where we are. We can be in our bedroom, our bathroom. It doesn't matter where we are. When we take our traumas and anything that we have dealt with and we share it openly and widely with other people to help them to, number one, heal for ourselves and also to help other people, that's a leader right there. A leader doesn't have to have a suit and a tie on or a fancy dress and blingy jewelry and be on a forefront. We can be in a group just like this and share our experiences by leading. So that's how I look at who's a leader and who's not a leader. And as far as power and privilege, do you have what power or privilege do you have, and how can you share it? And and I basically just threw in sharing our voices, sharing our traumas, sharing our lived experiences. But I would like to allow my sisters to weigh in as well. Thank you.
I agree with what Alicia, everything. Like she said, we didn't have a whole lot of time to touch on all the questions. As far as the power and the privilege goes, like she said, sharing our lived experiences, whether we're showing up here on these Zoom calls or in other organizations in your community, or personally, I wrote a book, Alicia wrote a book, just putting our stuff out there so that, we can be that voice for those people that are scared to speak up and try to erase the stigma that surrounds HIV and AIDS.
Great, thank you. And then I'm just going to quickly go
I'll
to
add.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Katie.
I was just going to say I agreed with Alicia in that I feel like I have power in my community as co-chair of our chapter, and I try to be involved in areas where with people who are making change, with my local ASO, with our local LGBT organization and such. But so I feel like I do have power in my community, but my issue was feeling like a leader, having confidence in my leadership or abilities to lead.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you, Katie. That's a powerful statement. All right, and finally we have room 1, which is Anne and Elder Antoinetta. Is there anyone in room 1 who'd like to share?
Yes, this is Ann from Alabama, aka Myra.
Yeah.
We got to the first, we were waiting for people to come into the group. We thought there would be more. But we got on the first question, who has the power in our community or organization? And we both agreed, even though she's in New York, I'm in Alabama, but it's mostly the politicians who really have the power, and people around that network. Alabama is a blood red state, so the good old boy system is very much in play in my area.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we had a few people who, as soon as they heard breakout rooms, they dropped off. So, people have varying degrees of comfort with breakout rooms. So that is, I'll just let everybody know that is the last breakout room that we'll be doing. Yeah, they broke out exactly, Alicia. They broke all the way out. So thank you, everyone, because it sounds like when we're talking about leaders, we're talking about both ourselves and our community as leaders. We're talking about what has kept us from seeing ourselves as a leader, and also who has power and privilege in a way that doesn't actually see us, recognize what's important to us. And that would be the white older men, the people with money. Oftentimes they don't see our needs or respond to what we want. So thank you, everyone, for sharing those points and perspectives. Next, we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Ebony to talk a little bit more.
Thank you, Barb. Thank you guys for sharing about, all of those questions, power, privilege, all of those things. You guys have some great responses. So we want to, talk about leadership. And of course, we all here do community advocacy. And what does coming together as a community lead to if you come together, plan, execute? It leads to community success. It leads to the success of whatever it is you guys are advocating around. Or if it doesn't lead to, a yes, there's always some type of success out of advocating as a community. I want to make sure everybody is seeing me because I see Barb's face and it looks, hearing me because I see Barb's face and it looks like she's, can you guys hear me? Okay. Okay, cool. Barb, I thought you were looking like, where's Ebony? All right. So yes. So I think Barb just put a great example in the chat. Community success and getting to you equals you accepted in so many countries and state health departments. That is a very, very important example and a great example. And I believe a lot of you on this call have contributed to that success. A lot of you on this call have contributed to the success of changing your community by doing community advocacy and getting success. So next slide. So to build community leadership, of course, there are 3 things that you need. And I would love to say that we can do leadership without politics, but you actually can't. Public policy, that is the policy that drives, all of the things that how we function as a community. Electoral politics, those are the people who write and vote and, make the policies. And then community organizing, that's us. We can inform those politics and policy, right? So in order to build community leadership, you have to, I love this graphic, it's a circle. It all works together. It all helps to make sure we're building leaders in our community. I think if you look at this from the bottom up, community, a lot of times politicians come out of community organizing. Most times, actually, politicians come out of community organizing. So you are a community organizer first in their community, then you run for office, which electoral politics, and then you start creating policies. So as you guys can see, in order to build community leadership, you need all three of these things. Barb, is there anything else you wanted to say about this?
Yeah, you know, we don't need to have all three of these things in each individual leader. This is about community leadership. And so you can think about it as your chapter. You can think about it as a group that you organize with at the state level or locally. But really, if you have one of these or two of these without the third, it doesn't lead to effective change. So you have the community organizing, you get out, you march in the streets, you even door knock and get people elected who represent progressive values that are so important. But if you don't have the public policy, then nothing is ever written into law or substantially changed. And so that's why you need to have the public policy along with the politics and the organizing. And if you have the policy and the electoral politics, but not the community organizing, then it has no base in the community. So if you think about this is a three-legged stool, you need all of them to be able to balance. And not everybody is going to bring all of them or love all of these types of leadership development. But it absolutely is that this is how you as a group can go ahead and really mobilize and make effective change.
And I'd like to say, I can't wait to vote for someone who is a PWN member. I can't wait for them to run for office. All right, we can go to our next slide. Community organizing is a process where people who have common and shared interests to each other come together in an organization that acts in their shared interests, as we do with AIDS Watch. I believe everybody here has either been to an AIDS Watch or participated somehow in AIDS Watch, but that is one of the ways the HIV community comes together to do organizing for our said issue. And we are pretty successful when we do it. Next slide. So, community organizing in the HIV world, people living with HIV should be central actors in creating policy. Barb, is this? I'm sorry, go ahead. I think I'm lagging. If you want, can you go ahead and take the slide?
Yeah, sure. So when we talk about community organizing, so we're going to go ahead and break down each of those three pillars and just kind of talk about it, and specifically in HIV spaces. And Ebony, it didn't sound like you were lagging. It might just have seemed like it, but I can go ahead and finish up this slide so you can just go ahead and take a minute. So we want to talk about in community organizing. As we know, that people living with HIV need to be the decision makers, be the messengers, and need to be involved from the very, very beginning. So when we talk about community organizing and people say, oh, we want to do healthcare and we want to include people living with HIV, but yet they already have the messaging down and they haven't invited us to come and have any conversations about it. It really is problematic, because a lot of times what we find is that it is stigmatizing. It doesn't effectively impact our community. And so we need to make sure that when we talk about community organizing in this community leadership place, that we are really making sure that we demand being in those seats of power, and that we have to be, again, we talked about it last time on the MEPA presentation. We have to be on the boards of directors. We need to be the senior staff at aid service organizations. And again, when we talk about MEPA, that it needs to be supported by our community organizing groups as well. MEPA plays throughout all of this.
Okay, thank you, Barb. If people are providing time, energy, we of course want them to be paid for their work. Nobody asks anybody to do work without paying them. So of course, we have advocated, long and hard for economic justice to make sure people living with HIV are paid for something like telling their story. Because a lot of people think, oh, that's so simple, you're telling your story. But no, I'm telling you, need to pay me for my time and energy to tell my story. Yes, it's my story. Yes, it'll help. But if you want me to do it for you, please pay me. And as Alicia said, relive trauma. Yes. Every time we tell our stories, we relive that trauma. And it is only right for us to be compensated for that. As well as attending meetings takes time and can be expensive. Reimbursement for gas and things like that. So when people ask you, or you ask someone to attend a meeting, you should compensate them, because you don't know, it's not free to do anything. So it's not going to be free at all for them to attend that meeting. They have to either drive, which uses gas, use a public transportation system. They may have to get childcare for kids. They may have to get elder care for a parent. You don't know their life. So please compensate them for that time if you want them to attend those meetings. If your organization is hiring, how does the job description include lived experience, or lived experience replacing school? So a lot of times advocates have been working and doing this work for years, and they have lived experience on how to do this work. They know because they are living it. They are the subject matter experts. So if your organization is hiring and they have stringent degree qualifications, they're not gonna necessarily get the best person for the job because they're not including lived experience. So we should, make sure we bring that up. And gift cards. So depending on the situation, some people may desire a gift card other than a check. Someone will appreciate a gift card other than sometimes, and I know that this might sound weird, but if you give me, and I'm not saying me personally, but I've heard some people say, oh, they gave me a candle and a thank you card. I would have preferred the cash or the money. And that's real. That's real because people, it's expensive to live in this world. So every little dime counts. If you can compensate someone for their time, do that, because we definitely need it and deserve it. Next slide. Oh, gatekeepers are my favorite. So these are the people who hold on to and manage access. Sometimes we don't know that we're gatekeeping. We think we're doing something good. Sometimes we do know we're gatekeeping because we're trying to keep people out, which, no one should try to keep people out, for multiple reasons. So we want to make sure that we are not gatekeeping. We are not people holding on to and managing access and not letting anybody in, because we are leaders who want to build leaders. And in order to build leaders, you have to let people in. You have to show people. You have to mentor people. You have to have people who you are ushering in with you, on the side of you. So when you get ready to grow and go into new rooms, you can. But a lot of times gatekeepers are using provided access, but can also block others from participating when they are content being the one in the room. So a lot of times, I'll say this, I've seen where people living with HIV have gotten into rooms, and I've seen other communities doing this, but right now we're talking about our community, have gotten into the room, and because they are so excited about being the one that the people always call on, they don't ever want to let anybody in. And the problem with that is you can't represent every community. The other problem with that is you need support. You know, you can get burnt out trying to be the one and the only one. So we need to make sure we're not doing that, because the thing is, once you get in and you're doing a good job, you can grow to another level. You don't have to stay in that one spot. You can grow, and if you to do some bigger and better things. So you should want to bring people in. You should want people to come in with you and support you. So you don't always have to be there. And life doesn't allow us to always be there. So you want to make sure you're not the gatekeeper. You want to make sure if you see a gatekeeper, you call them in. If you know a gatekeeper, call them in. Because we know in our community, and everybody on this call could probably speak of one gatekeeper right now. Don't do it, though. Don't be messy in our chat. But you can probably think of one person who is a gatekeeper, and I encourage you guys to call them in. Gatekeepers versus caretakers. Wow. I think that is a strong thing to think about, because some people think they're taking care of things and they're actually gatekeeping. So, Barb, you want to talk about the difference in what it looks like?
Yeah, because I think that oftentimes, especially when we're in groups with state boards of health or aid service organizations or other groups, they think of a gatekeeper as being someone who is able to connect them to the community, who can bring other people in, and they don't actually understand that sometimes that can be a position that doesn't work that way, that they don't bring people in, or that if they bring people in, that they're just choosing a particular person. And so, you know, absolutely, I like the language of an usher or a caretaker, because we also want to make sure that when people show up at these meetings, or we bring people into these meetings, especially as new leaders, that we are making sure that they understand what's going on. Shepherd, absolutely. That a lot of this is more what we sort of instinctually do, because we have been in those places where somebody has said, okay, you know, I want one woman living with HIV to come and speak on this panel. And it's like, well, no, you know, you kind of get one PWN member, you get us all. We move in a pack. That's just the way we do. And there might be one person on stage, but we're all there as support. So shepherding, ushering, caretaking is a way to make sure that people know how they are supposed to participate, what's going to be on the agenda, how to bring up a point. And we've talked about all of this on sort of our other organizing curriculum webinars. How is a vote taken? Who votes? All of that stuff is somebody that a caretaker or an usher or a shepherd really helps people understand, so that people aren't feeling kind of isolated, so they're not blocked. They're also not brought in where they're not prepared to be. And so, you know, absolutely, we want to make sure that we continue to really bring in new leaders. Because as I've seen in the chat, you know, some of us are, not myself, of course, because I am eternally young, but some of us are aging and would actually like to get to a point where we retire, or where we can step back and let someone else take over. And having people be really prepared to step into those leadership roles ensures that the important work continues. And it goes back to who holds the power and the privilege. We need to hold the power and privilege, and we need to pass it on by being able to make sure that people are prepared. So thanks, Ev, for letting me share that little bit there, because I have been in places where I have come up against gatekeepers, and it is it's a pretty tough place to be. And it is a place where it is easy to get frustrated and not feel like our voice is heard and that we don't want to be there anymore. And so absolutely, there's gatekeeper, helping them figure out how to be more of a caretaker is an important way to work.
Thanks, Barb. So disclosure and leadership. We all know, I think every last one of us know, disclosure is a continuum. We must demand that opportunities for people living with HIV to participate along the disclosure spectrum is available. Of course, disclosing our status is our choice. We do it when we're ready, we do it when we're prepared, or we never do it. But there is and should be a place for us to participate along the spectrum. We know stigma and discrimination is real. So sometimes it takes people longer, depending on the situation, to disclose, and sometimes they never do, and because they can't, because of whatever stigma and discrimination they're dealing with. We should not ever be afraid to speak our truth. And violence against people living with HIV happens. So safety must be a concern. Disclosure can mean different things to different people, of course, and we must create opportunities for leaders to participate along the spectrum and focus on creating spaces that are safe for disclosure. And until this happens, we have to respect the spectrum. Yeah, there should always be an opportunity for people to disclose no matter where they are on the spectrum. And what I find with leadership is if you allow people to participate where they are, as they participate, as they continue to show up, they are actually getting the confidence, the things that they need to become a leader, and eventually disclosure typically happens as long as they're in a safe environment and they feel safe. So actually creating that space where they can participate, whether they've disclosed or not, helps them to build their confidence and build and get the things that they need to understand that they can disclose and be a powerful voice as well. And it helps them along their journey of what I call overcoming HIV, like being afraid of it and overcoming it. Next slide. Intersectionality. So of course, identity is complex and changing. Our identity, we are not one thing. We are one person, but we have many identities. And HIV is one part of our identity, but other parts become more pronounced based on the setting we are in. We must demand that our identities and the challenges they bring be a part of HIV advocacy, because our lives aren't simple. Our advocacy should not be either. And you guys know this famous quote from Audre Lorde. I'm sure there is no such thing as a single issue struggle, because we do not live single issue lives. We have multiple issues that we deal with in our lives. So this is another one of the reasons why we can't be gatekeeping as leaders, because we need as many leaders with as many identities, making plans and organizing with us as possible, because identity is complex and different identities deal with different things. Even with, someone who has, if you identify as a woman, there are multiple ways that there are multiple things, multiple issues women deal with. So just because I'm a woman living with HIV does not mean I can represent all women living with HIV. Next slide. That's you, Bart. Uh-oh, the slides went away. And you're on mute.
It's a whole train wreck. Okay, hang on. Let me get the slides up because we want to make sure that we are sharing this with everyone. So weird. Oh, technology. Okay. Let me go ahead and just start it again. No.
So while she's doing that, I'll just say, Alicia said, we are all different and one person does not know everything. So we need one another. We absolutely need one another. We need support too. So we have to, develop leaders and bring them into the room with us so we can have that support.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Ebony, for letting me know the slides went away, and also they should be back now. Can everyone see the slides?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So we talked about the community organizing and leadership part, which is the base of that circle. Now we're going to just talk briefly about the other parts, and then we'll get into examples of leadership and how you can identify leaders and how you can, as a leader, really talk to people. And Ebony is going to give us a couple of examples of that. But we wanted to finish that circle and talk about public policies. So it is one thing to go ahead and community organize. And if you do not have the other two parts of it, as I mentioned earlier, your advocacy is not as effective. Your leadership, your community leadership is not as effective. And so when we talk about public policies, this is defined as the systems of laws and regulatory measures, courses of action, and funding priorities. Funding priorities. I'm going to underline that again, because this is about the money. Money is so important because it is how we are able to do the work, how the organizations are able to do the work. And especially as they're talking about a particular topic that we're advocating about, is a governmental entity or its representative. So it is important. It is so important for us to know that when we are advocating, that we must always look to the policies that we are impacting, that we are seeking to impact and change. We have a number of folks who are on planning councils, and they go ahead and they delegate where the funding goes to, often based on these policies, these public policies that are put forth by the federal government or the state government. If they are not able to put the money in the places that we feel that they need to go, for example, mental health, recovery, housing in ways that is accessible for families, all of that needs to change at the public policy level for us to then be able to build our leaders and our leadership and advocate for people. And so we have a couple of examples here. Again, we've got the ACA repeal, and that really was the strongest and most strident way that we could provide feedback on a proposed public policy. Just for those who perhaps might not realize, in 2017, and I know that we have some new folks who weren't with PWNs, but in 2017, the Affordable Care Act, which had been passed by President Obama, which gave everyone access to health care. In some states, it was pretty expensive still, but at least gave people access. Also meant that you couldn't be denied health care because of a pre-existing condition like HIV, but also pre-existing conditions like depression and asthma, that you were able to take your health insurance with you when you changed jobs. All of this that made it so much easier for people to be able to live strong and healthy lives, either living with HIV or other health complications. In 2017, the conservatives tried to actually repeal that and to take that back. And so we went ahead and we provided our input on this public policy, saying that we opposed it. We protested, we shut down offices, we marched with signs, we wrote letters. It was a huge mobilization effort. And because of it, that repeal did not pass. And it did not pass by one vote. And so when we talk about the power of our public policies and our power to resist them, we are an immense and amazing army. when it comes to being able to provide that feedback. So it could be a letter to the editor, it could be going to Washington, DC and lying down on the floors of Congress. All of those are so important as we talk about really providing input around public policies. And again, like I said, when I was emphasizing the money, when we think about what we are not able to fund, these are the basis and where we need to go ahead and impact those changes. Then we next have the electoral policies and politics, and that is the other side of that circle. And it is important for us to know that when we are advocating for integrated voter engagement, and we are a nonprofit, and so we need to do this, we need to talk about what issues are important to us. We need to help our community be able to understand how they get information. Because it is really important that when we think about all of our races, so again, we have our state delegates and our state representatives, those folks are making state-based decisions about funding. We just saw today that Alabama was going to be using some of their COVID-19 money to build prisons. That is a state-based decision that we can go ahead and push back against when we're talking to our elected folks. We can talk about state attorney generals. There are some state attorney generals who have decided that they want to reform the criminal justice system or criminal injustice system, and that they want to be able to not charge people with crimes due to their HIV status, or they want to go ahead and be more progressive around those policies. So when we talk about elected politics, that is so important as well, because those are the people that are our voice in these halls of power. And again, when we talk about other progressive issues, we certainly are going to be talking about voting rights and who supports voting rights. So for sure, that is important for us to talk about as well. So these are the three sides of that when we're talking about leaders and leadership. So it could be that somebody doesn't want to be in the streets, or doesn't want to be going to jail, or doesn't want to be protesting, or doesn't even want to be dealing with elected officials. That is fine. It is important, though, to know that we need all three of those when we're talking about our leadership and leadership development. So there's some steps around political engagement. As you can see, this is actually a community town hall meeting where a number of people living with HIV, this was about Medicaid expansion. And this was a state that was not planning on expanding Medicaid. We know that Medicaid gives people access not just to HIV life-saving medications, it also enables them to be able to get tests and to have all their labs done, to have doctor's visits, all of that we know goes into people leading full and healthy lives. And so this is a protest where people were saying that that was not acceptable. So we want to go ahead, and as we talk about our political engagement, we talk about building coalitions, education, and then, you know what, taking over. Sometimes we just have to stand up, shout back, and take over and tell people that, again, back to that first discussion that we had around who has power. We can use our power. We can use our power of our bodies. We can use the power of our bodies. We can use the power of our subject matter expertise. On our last webinar, Vanessa recommended that everybody put SME after our names, subject matter expert, because nobody knows HIV, nobody knows our communities like we do. So that is our kind of brief review of those three parts of it as we're talking about leadership. And then just wanted to go ahead and share, and Ebony, I think this is your slide here, where we were going to talk about, these are our places where we, oh no, this is me, sorry. So when we talk about building power and sustainable leadership, these are just some of our examples. These are people in our community who are doing outreach and are partnering with communities in ways that are not often traditional in our HIV spaces, but these are what each of our groups have felt is important. So the upper left-hand corner is our PWN Colorado, that's the mod squad right there, where we were able to go ahead and work and redraft our HIV specific statutes and remove two of those that criminally targeted people living with HIV. That was not something that anyone in the health department or anywhere else wanted to do, but it was something that we identified and saw a need to do. As we were starting that advocacy effort, over half of our people that we brought in to work on this had never been involved before. Now they are involved not just with the community leadership, but they also are involved in writing policy, as well as in the electoral politics. And so again, each of these is a way to bring people in as leaders, identify something that's important to them, and help them then see where they can be most effective. The Texas Strike Force, the PWN Texas Strike Force, I mean, I have to tell you, if you've not followed this group, they are some badass advocates who throw down in the public policy spaces. I mean, seriously, in the public policy spaces, they are able to analyze laws that are moving through the Texas legislature. Some of them are pretty nasty. And they are able to really mobilize. Again, this is not traditional spaces that HIV groups organize in. Normally, we're like the, take to the streets and write a letter and protest and organize and mobilize. Talk to your clinic about what kind of care we want. But the Texas Strike Force is advocating on reproductive justice. They're advocating on so much else as well. And I know we've got some of the Strike Force folks that are on here. So if you want to put in the chat box, what areas you're advocating for, especially around public policies or with elected officials, that would be great. Other ongoing non-traditional ways that we don't normally see HIV advocacy, but that we build leaders is in the lower right-hand corner. And this is our Pennsylvania chapter. So they decided that for voter education and outreach, what they wanted to do was have backpacks for kids that were going back to school. And so they went ahead and they built up backpacks that they gave to kids who were school age. And then they talked to the parents about registering to vote and being able to engage at that. So really, when we talk about it, that is a non-traditional way where we are using our community mobilization. Then we have HIV advocacy days, which is going in and advocating with elected officials. And then, just had to include the one with the PWN Alabama chapter. This is when they really were forming, norming, and performing with their wonderful little, I love their little AIDS ribbons on their hands. And just that is, again, a reminder that when we come together in community, we can impact all of these in ways that nobody expects us to be able to do. So, Ev, before we get into the self-care part of it, can you tell me about, for you, how do you spot leaders? How do you know which of maybe these 3 areas they're going to be interested in, and how do you bring them in?
You're on mute, Mark.
Yep. So Ebony, I was just asking you, so how do you identify someone who's a possible leader?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I thought you were asking the whole group that. So I tried to identify leaders by if people keep showing up, that means they want to be there. That means they want to join. That means they want to participate in whatever it is you do. 2, if they are really good at something and they're always speaking up on a specific issue, that tells me that that is what they are tuned in to do. And if I develop some type of activities or give them some focus around that they're going to take it and run. 3, if it brings them joy to work on it. Like if I see enjoys working on a specific thing, then I know that thing is going to give them joy. It's not going to be a task. It's going to be something that they are excited to do and that they are willing to do. So when I identify it, that this is something that they're good at or something that they keep showing up to be around, then I just typically invite them to meetings with me in that realm, or send them information about the thing that they're interested in, send them information about how they can get involved in that. And that typically helps them take off. They get the information, they get involved in the meetings, the planning, all of the things. And then the next thing I know, they world leaders. And I'm not joking. They are literally world leaders. So that's pretty much how I identify leaders, just by observing. I look around. When I go into a room, I typically like to sit in the back so I can observe what is happening. I can observe the people so I can know who I can bring with me next time, or so I can know who to get involved, because there's no way I can do, all things myself.
And so then to the group, is there any other way that you identify leaders that Ebony hasn't highlighted or that we haven't talked about?
I see Mary said, I listened to the Texas Strike Force and became inspired. Yes, that's what we like to hear. That's another thing, doing things that, going to, like, sometimes I attend meetings that I don't really know what's it about, but I know it's in the realm of what I might do. And if I attend that, a lot of times, I might get inspired to help others. So look for other things outside of the norm in order to meet other people who are doing the same type of work and create there. Alicia says, when people ask to help when there are events or projects. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
These are all great ways.
Yeah, these are all really great ways. *6 to unmute if you're on a phone and want to add something, or you can just go ahead and unmute yourself if you have another idea you want to share.
The showing up and being consistent. Yes, as you said earlier. Yes, all of those things let you recognize leaders. Jesse?
Hey.
Hey. Did you have something to share?
Well, I don't pertain to this, but I just got married on Tuesday.
Oh, okay. Thanks for sharing. I just seen your name.
Actually, did y'all hear about the Spark
oh yeah,
Spark grant?
Yes. This is, but we're going to talk about that offline, because we're live on Facebook with and this is a training. So we want to make sure we stay on focus. And congratulations. Congratulations on marriage.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. It looks like Lisa said, when their values, integrity, and agenda line up with yours. Good one, Lisa. Good one.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah. One that I want to add is when there's somebody new. And so in some of our smaller communities or our smaller organizing spaces, we go to a meeting and we see somebody that we haven't seen before. And I always make sure that I sit down next to them or talk to them at a break, or occasionally I'll follow them to the bathroom in a non-creepy way, to try and first off, make sure that they know that they're welcome in this space, see if they have any questions, give them my email so that they can follow up, because sometimes people will come and I usually stop at the bathroom door, Morgan. That's the non-creepy way, is that I don't follow them all the way in, but I just sort of walk down the hall with them to answer the how do you follow someone to the bathroom in a non-creepy way. So I will do that, is I will make sure that they know that they are really, and that we're excited to see them, that we're happy to have them there, and that we want to support them and answer any questions that they might have. So that oftentimes because I've been in spaces where I'm a new person and nobody comes and talks to me because they're all busy kind of catching up on what each other has done. And that's important too. But keeping an eye out for the new people, that's important. So looks like we got a couple of great comments in the chat box. So Ev, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you then as we continue along, because we talk about building leaders and building ourselves as leaders. And this part is as important as anything.
Yeah, I think this part is really important when talking about building leaders, because one of the reasons why we want to always bring somebody with us or share information with others, build leaders, is because we have to take care of ourselves. We cannot be everywhere. We cannot be at every meeting. We cannot always be on, in, or hyped up. None of that. We can't always be in all the places. So we have to care for ourselves, and because we deserve it, because we do so much out here for our community. You deserve it, and to invest time in practices that nourish you. Meditation, walk, check in with friends, breathe, massage, vacation, staycation. All of these things are really important for you to take care of yourself. Asking for help. Another reason, you know another leader because you work there side by side, and you can reach out and ask for help. Learn to say no is a huge one. A lot of us always want, we don't, I'm gonna just be honest. Some of us are people pleasers. A lot of us are people pleasers because we love people and we don't ever like to say no, but we have to learn to say no. If we say no, that does not mean the work won't get done. People can always find someone to do what they need them to do. And it's always important to find some time just for you. Those are the times, alone time is the times when I am most inspired and when I do my best work, because I'm able to reflect on things that, has happened, and I'm really able to get in touch with self. So make sure you find some time just for you. Yes, Maria, say yes to saying no. Absolutely. Next slide. Oh, wait, Audrey Lord, let's go back to the caring for myself is not self-indulgence. It is self-preservation. And that is an act of political warfare. I love it. Next slide. That's you.
I can go ahead and take the next one. And so just a couple more reminders, because we are all activists here. And so it is important for us to think about being woke and being mobilized does not need to mean that your spirit is broke. Limping along to do this work does not suit anyone or help anyone. So a couple of other talking points to think about are, social media. Sometimes we get into these spirals where we're trying to correct someone or push back or argue a point. There are points in time where you get to actually stop and say, I'm done, and walk away. You don't have to fight every fight, especially on social media, because there are a lot of trolls there. And so think about your energy and how much of your energy is being used to push back. Then we want to treat yourself. This is so important. This was also really important for me to learn as well, is treat yourself like you would treat a really good friend. So don't say things to yourself that you wouldn't say to a good friend. Encourage yourself to get up and take walks and give permission to step away like you would a good friend. Drink water, all of those things that we say to each other as we are in spaces together. Make sure that you're stepping away and breathing and going outside and all of that. It is okay to say those to yourself as well. It's important. It's not just okay, it's important to say those to yourself as well. Sometimes, especially over the weekend, or if you're taking time away for mental health breaks or self-care breaks, it is okay to deinstall your social media or the news apps on your phone. you can come back, and you can even say to somebody, you know what, I'm going to step away from the news for a couple of days. And do you mind if I call you when I come back and see if there was anything really important that I missed? And then people will be listening. But there is a lot that is going on in the world these days, a lot that is really hard and grinds us down, and it is okay to step away and take a break. Make sure you take time for you. That we covered that one on the other slide. But you know, advocacy, if we get across the finish line or whatever that looks like, if we accomplish something and we are just torn up and wrecked by the time we do it, it doesn't do anyone any good. This needs to be a sustainable movement. So what we're trying to do is say, identify leaders, take care of yourself, and together we can really mobilize into this healthy, powerful, amazing, amazing group. And then again, once again, give yourself permission to say no. It's a good reminder. There are a couple of groups who actually help keep each other accountable for saying no by keeping a no log and writing down when somebody has actually said no. So that if you sort of forget and you're like, I am not going to get in an argument with my brother-in-law who is a Trumpster. I'm not going to do that anymore, right? So if you write down and you say that's my no, or you know, just a conservative or somebody who is hard to talk to, but then I come back and I find myself doing that, then it is okay for somebody to remind me that I have said no to that, and then that I'm stepping away from that. Because sometimes we just get sucked back into those patterns that really don't serve us so well any longer.
Self-care for communities. So we want to make sure we check in on those who aren't doing well. Recognize the difference in the ability to travel and participate. That's an important one, because a lot of times we don't think about people's ability to travel and participate, but we should definitely think about that when we are making sure to check in and inviting people places. Offer help to those who are struggling and might not be able to ask. How can I best support you is a great question. What I have started doing with my community, instead of saying, if you need anything, ask, I just say, how can I best support you? Because it gives them an opportunity to then say it instead of calling you later or asking. So yeah, care for our communities requires self-care. Create processes for unheard voices to participate. When we know there are people in the room who, you know, maybe a little shy or maybe, you know, intimidated or whatever it is, create a process. You know, a lot of times we say that step up, step back, you know, to make sure people in the room are comfortable and people who are a little quiet can participate, or even calling on everybody in the room, just to not make it seem like you're picking on them, but it's an expectation because you called everybody. So creating a process for unheard voices to participate. There's a lot of ways to do that. Plan time for social support and community connections. Meet people where they are at in their advocacy, and don't judge someone else's growth, because we are, again, all individuals, all not living single issue lives. So we never want to judge anybody else for their growth. Next slide. Key takeaway message. Do what you love. Participate in the things. There's always something that you can find in this work that you really, really, really enjoy. And I find when you are doing the thing that you love to do, you never work a day in your life. So do what you love, do what you enjoy, tap into the work that brings you joy and fills you up. I know that it used to be a time in my advocacy in the beginning years that I enjoyed the work so much, working with people and young people and doing what I love, that the money wasn't a huge problem at all. Like, I didn't even, I hate to say this. I hope there's nobody, just money it wasn't the most important thing. Whatever people were gonna pay me, I was like, okay, you're gonna pay it. But it was because I love it. But don't take my example. Get you some money, even if you love it. Because this capitalistic society requires it. But do what you love, because that will, it just breeds for a healthier experience. It breeds for a healthier you and a healthier community. And that's all I have.
Great. So Ebony, we're going to leave that wonderful picture of you up as we go ahead and see if anyone has any questions or comments for us.
Hello, this is Mary Johnson from Birmingham, Alabama. And wanted to say thanks for the opportunity to be on here and to learn and to grow with you ladies and to continue to move forward.
Wonderful. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
Anyone else have anything that they, yeah, so Meta just went ahead and put a comment in the chat box that says, it spends better when you realize that people pay you for what you love. Makes you feel valued and empowered. Yeah,
Absolutely does, Meta.
absolutely.
Yes. It feels so much better when you're getting paid for what you're worth, because all of us are worth it because we are subject matter experts. So it feels so much better when people pay us for our expertise.
Yeah.
Any other comments before we go? Questions? I seen Barb drop the survey in the comments multiple times. Y'all go ahead and click on that link and take that survey, please. Please, and more please, because this is one of the things that I'm not gonna say nobody likes creating surveys. Somebody out there likes creating surveys, but it's not the most fun thing to do for a lot of people. So go ahead and click on it and fill it out so it's all worth it. And then what is fun to do is reading your comments from it. We love to read your comments. So please take the Survey Monkey. And if anybody needs to contact myself or Barb, here is our emails. We would love to hear from you if you have anything you want to say. If you are out there and you want to get involved, you want to become well, you're already a leader if you're here, but if you want to know anything about your leadership or improve your leadership or be a stronger voice in your community, please contact us, because we have multiple people we can link you to, we can help you, we can support you in whatever way that you need. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. And we, as I always say, we'll see you all in these internet streets. Bye.